So President Trump is not a fan of action on climate change. Hell, he doesn't even believe that climate change is real. He believes that it's a hoax perpetuated from the Chinese to hurt American business. Now, during his campaign, he, of course, made that very, very well known, talking on his campaign stops about undoing all the climate regulations from President Obama. We're going to undo all this climate stuff, and we're going to make America coal again, man. That's what we're going to do. Coal country, oil, natural gas. Let's do it. Let's drill. Drill, baby, drill. Now, he has done a lot of those promises. He has fulfilled a lot of those campaign promises to roll back a lot of President Obama's mandates on climate change. The stuff that he was able to roll back, those executive orders. So now he's actually going to fulfill another campaign promise, and that is according to Politico. See, this is a White House official that was cited by Politico. President Trump is now planning to pull the United States out of the Climate Paris Agreement. Now, Axios originally reported on this news, the speculated news that he would withdraw from the 200-nation agreement to curb CO2 emissions. Now, this is unfortunately after world leaders repeatedly pressed Trump on the issue during his recent trip to Europe. Now, Pope Francis actually, say what you will about Pope Francis, on some issues, he is actually, like I said, some issues, he's actually fairly progressive when it comes to, for example, climate change. So when the Pope, when Donald Trump visited the Pope had written earlier a 192-page encyclical on why we should actually do something about climate change, and then gave that to Donald Trump when they met in the Vatican. Now, on that, Francis, did you really think that Trump was going to read that? It is 192 pages long. We know from White House leaks that Donald Trump won't even read a 4-page intelligence briefing. He's not going to read that unless it's 191.5 pages of really killer graphics. He ain't interested in reading anything, okay? You know why? Because he's a child, and unfortunately his childish decisions are very dangerous. Now, even Trump's Secretary of State, to show you how stupid and single-minded this decision is, you have Rex Tillerson, former oil guy, okay? Former oil CEO of ExxonMobil, and the major oil companies such as ExxonMobil and Shell urging Trump to not pull out of this agreement. Even the oil companies are like, dude, you better stay in this agreement, man. Like, you better stay in the Paris Accords, okay? And actually do a little bit on climate change. When the oil companies are telling you that, you know you're messing up, okay? That says something. Now, unfortunately, Politico writes, the vast campaign to persuade the U.S. to remain ultimately did not sway the president. And let me tell you why, at least in my opinion, why I think. It's because Obama negotiated it. Anything Obama did, and I'm noticing this pattern, anything Obama has done, Trump has immediately wanted to get rid of it. He cannot stand the idea of Barack Obama leaving any sort of positive legacy, whether or not his own people inside the White House. You have Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump saying, hey, you know, we should stay in the Paris Agreement. The two closest people to Donald Trump in the inner circle saying, hey, let's stay in here. Rex Tillerson, hey, let's stay in here. The oil companies, let's stay in the Paris Agreement. Steve Bannon, however, said, let's get out of the Paris Agreement. And Bannon, in this case, won, and I think and Bannon has his own reasons. He's a nationalist, of course, a white nationalist, and he hates doing any sort of agreements with any other country. And he also says, well, hey, jobs. I can get to that point later on the jobs. But Bannon ended up winning out on this issue, to the detriment of everyone in the planet. Okay? But again, it goes back to, I think, in my opinion, of the fact that he just wants to erase everything positive that President Obama had done. I think he's got this Obama complex. Like, oh, did Obama do something? Well, then I need to immediately reverse it. Not on my watch, Hussein. Get that shit out of here. Baby. Sad. Now, unfortunately, there's a precedent for us basically negotiating these deals and then reneging on them when a new administration gets voted into office. Trump's move marks the second time in 2 decades that the United States has negotiated, signed, but then spurned a major international climate pact following the change of party control in the White House. The previous occasion, the decision by George W. Bush to abandon the 1997 Kyoto Accord negotiated by the Clinton administration caused years of distrust in the U.S. international climate circles. Well, again, that seems to be because the only, United States is the only country where a major political party doesn't believe that climate change is an issue. You have United States senators bringing in snowballs into congressional chambers as proof that climate change is a hoax. Proof. Okay, you have people like Inhofe. No, I don't believe in climate change whatsoever. He's the head of the EPA, who for years said, "Oh, climate change, pff, not a thing, man. Not actually happening. In fact, we need to put more carbon in the atmosphere in order to green the planet." Ridiculous. But look, in fact, Republican leaders in Congress, while Obama was negotiating this, said, "Hey, man, don't trust Obama, because as soon as we get into power, we're going to reverse all of that because we're idiots." That's essentially what it is. And that's what happens. And unfortunately, conservatives seem to be the reason that we can't have nice things like health care, clean air, and clean water. Because they have undone, again, Obama's rules on clean air and clean water. And they're looking to get rid of health care. And what's worse than that is when it comes to climate change and doing action on climate change, most of the world, the rest of the world, is actually on board. There are 2 countries, along with the United States, that did not sign on to the Paris Agreement, and that is the good countries of Syria and Nicaragua. Wonderful company, Trump. Wonderful company. So now that it's likely that the U.S. is pulling out, well, that's going to have some repercussions. Okay. Now, on one of them, it's going to take years for the U.S. to actually formally withdraw from the Paris deal. But that's not the biggest problem here. Now, while we are the world's 2nd largest carbon polluter, our decision to walk away will actually threaten the resolve of some of the other countries, the bigger polluters, to try to reduce their carbon emissions. You have China and India. Well, if the United States walks away, which it seems like we're doing, well, China and India, well, there's really no incentive for them to stay into the deal. Now, right now, they're still there. But are they going to honor their pledge now? We don't know. I thought Trump was supposed to be a leader. You want to be a world leader? Be a world leader on climate change. The only thing he's leading us into is the abyss. And yes, look, I am aware of the fact that even if we had stayed and stuck with the deal, it wouldn't be enough. Scientists and climate activists have said that the targets Obama and other leaders in Paris wouldn't cut enough carbon pollution to prevent the worst effects of climate change. Instead, they said the signing nations would have to steadily escalate their commitments in coming years, something that was actually very difficult when, you have a divided Republican government and, of course, some Democrats who are on the side of fossil fuels as well. You would have to give their support and some of these red state corporate Democrats who receive money from the oil and gas industry. So there's those issues. Now, the agreement calls on countries to aim to limit global warming to well below 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit from pre-industrial levels. And it said countries should pursue efforts to keep temperatures increases 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. So those are the goals of Paris, and we actually need to do better than that to avoid these worst effects. Now, in order to get those, we would have to right now enact a massive change in our energy policy. Nothing short of completely changing and transforming our energy grid, something Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein have talked about. Now, that is a serious undertaking. But with that actually comes, and get this, you'll be surprised, jobs and opportunity. Hey, because look, whenever you have massive amounts of government spending, it comes with industry. Now, if we were to invest heavily into solar, and they're just and they build all these solar plants and they start popping up all over the country, and wind farms and things like that, geothermal plants, that's going to actually create jobs, manufacturing jobs, as well as running the things. So that is going to mean a lot of job and economic growth. Now, we could get that done, and it would reduce emissions significantly. Instead, what we're doing is we're not being a world leader, and we're going to continue doubling down on coal, oil, and natural gas, despite the fact that coal is a dying industry, and it's actually more expensive when you factor in the environmental impacts than wind and solar. So we're heading into some very dark times indeed under the Trump administration. In fact, how dark? According to scientists, under a business as usual scenario, so if we continue doing what we're doing, global temperatures could rise between 4.7 degrees Fahrenheit and 8.6 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of the century. This is according to the United Nations numbers. That increase, they say, would have catastrophic consequences. Droughts, floods, massive migration, something that Donald Trump wouldn't be happy about, because then you'd have all these people in islands that are being swallowed by the sea flooding to America. Well, he wouldn't like that. A lot of people wouldn't like that. Not only that, but you have the risks of famines, extinctions of entire species, the end of chocolate, which I would have an issue with, as well as the end of coffee. I would have a big issue with that. I got to have my morning brew. And look, the reason that those places, that those things would come to an end is because the places that grow them wouldn't be able to grow them anymore. Some of the places would be underwater, and other places it would heat up so much that it would make it unable for these plants to grow. So those are the effects of business as usual. That's not counting any more investment in coal and oil and natural gas and opening up more oil fields and more drilling and burning more fossil fuels under the Trump administration. It doesn't count any of that. So ultimately, I think it's pretty obvious that this presidency is an absolute disaster for the climate. And it's pretty clear as well that we're going to be living with the consequences of this Trump presidency when it comes to climate change long after Donald Trump leaves office. Sad. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.